Imagine walking out of the cold into a tiny smoke-filled theater in Rhode Island. It's late 1948.
Right.
A man in a suit wheels a full-sized working street lamp right onto the stage. He reaches into this hollow metal pole, pulls out a cigarette, strikes a match on the glass lantern, and then...
This is the best part.
It's impossible. He turns a small spigot on the side of the lamppost and just, pours himself a real drinkable cocktail.
Yeah, it defies physics or at least fluid dynamics.
Exactly. So how does a guy in a local neighborhood social club engineer a prop like that?
Well, you have to look at the environment that produced him, right? That kind of hyper-creative, obsessive engineering, it doesn't just happen in a vacuum.
Right. It needs an incubator.
Yeah, a very specific type of incubator, a place where people are constantly pushing each other to invent, entirely new realities.
And that incubator is our mission for today's deep dive. So for you listening right now, we're stepping into a very specific, really vibrant microcosm of post-war Americana.
We've got a fascinating stack of sources for this one.
We really do. We're pulling from vintage issues of the Linking Ring magazine, spanning late 1948 to mid-1949. And we are zooming all the way in on the International Brotherhood of Magicians.
Specifically, Rhode Island Ring 44.
Yes, also known as the William E. Baker Ring.
So we're basically dissecting this deeply connected subculture of illusionists. By looking at these exact documents, we get to understand not just, what these local magicians performed, but how they actually honed their craft.
How they engineered the illusions.
Exactly. And how they built a community that eventually influenced the national stage.
So set the scene in your mind. It's the first Friday of the month. You're walking down Observatory Avenue in North Providence, and you step through the doors of Baker's Miniature Theater.
The smell of grease paint, right?
Yeah, grease paint, the sound of giant playing cards being shuffled. And on the night of December 3rd, 1948, the energy in that room was just completely electric.
The documentation of that specific night is incredibly rich. The meeting was officially designated as Uncle John Davison night.
Uncle John?
Yeah, and the first thing that really jumps out from the records is this display of interorganizational collaboration.
Right, because the William E. Baker Ring was an IBM chapter, but they weren't the ones performing.
No, the entertainment that night was actually provided by a visiting group. It was the Worcester, Massachusetts SAM chapter.
The Society of American Magicians, Assembly Number 16.
Exactly. They came down to put on the show.
And let's look at the actual acts they put on, because they are wonderfully bizarre. We're not talking about pulling a rabbit out of a hat here.
Far from it.
A guy named County Commissioner Chauce. Frace gets up there, and he presents a, quote, giant card houlette.
A houlette, yeah.
Right, and for anyone listening who isn't a vintage magic historian, a houlette is basically this mechanical holder or a stand for a deck of cards.
It's usually rigged, right?
Yeah, with hidden weights or invisible threads, so a chosen card can mysteriously rise out of the deck on its own. But imagine trying to build a giant version of that by hand in the 1940s.
Scaling up a mechanical trick like that introduces a whole host of engineering problems.
I bet.
You've got the friction of oversized cards, the visibility of the gimmick. It requires a really deep understanding of mechanics.
Wow.
And that same night, another guy, James Cody, performs this flashy Chinese act where he vanishes a large pipe into a sheet of paper.
And then follows it with a fireball routine.
Producing a flaming bowl from literally nowhere.
That sounds incredibly dangerous.
Oh, absolutely. He was most likely relying on, a concealed chemical ignition or maybe a hidden friction match.
In a packed, tiny theater.
Yeah, requiring absolute precision so you don't accidentally set the whole miniature theater on fire.
Which makes my absolute favorite act of the night even more terrifying, honestly.
Oh, the milk?
Yes. Fred Foshee and Company presented an act called Cocktails for Two. He puts a glass of milk inside a whirling hoop.
Just unbelievable.
Just picture the sheer centrifugal force keeping that milk in the glass while he swings it over the heads of his peers. The risk of covering the front row in dairy is incredibly high.
High-stakes magic.
And then he vanishes the milk, cuts a continuous chain out of a sheet of paper, and does a 6-card repeat. He topped it all off with something called a card castle.
Which is funny because the 6-card repeat is a classic, but it's notoriously difficult to master.
Really? How does it work?
You count 6 cards out loud, you throw 3 away into a hat, and then you count them again, and somehow you still have 6 cards.
That's trippy.
It is. It relies on incredibly subtle false counts, palming extra cards, and this perfect psychological pacing so the audience doesn't notice your hands reloading the deck.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because when you describe the mechanics, the hidden threads, the chemical ignitions, the palming, it feels exactly like modern obsessive DIY maker culture.
Oh, totally.
Like those indie open mic nights or hardware hackathons, where everyone is just trying to out-weird and out-engineer each other with their crazy garage projects.
It literally is a hackathon. And just like a modern hackathon, the constraints are what breed the creativity.
Right, they didn't have massive budgets.
Exactly, because these local guys didn't have, like, Broadway-level production budgets. They had to rely on sheer mechanical ingenuity.
You use raw centrifugal force to keep the milk in the glass.
Just to try and outdo the guy who performed a mechanical card rise right before you.
Yeah.
But if we look at the psychology behind that level of DIY engineering, it reveals something really crucial about Ring 44.
What's that?
This wasn't just a clinical testing lab, it was a deeply intimate brotherhood.
You see that intimacy so clearly in the second half of that December 3rd meeting. They celebrated Uncle John Davison.
The guest of honor.
Yeah, he was an international past president, basically an elder statesman of the group. Territorial Vice President Everett Ingram produces this massive cake.
Not just any cake, an 80-candle cake.
80 candles, baked from scratch by Mrs. Davison herself. Just think about the ambient heat coming off an 80-candle cake in a tiny, packed theater.
Sweaty magicians everywhere.
Seriously. And Mrs. Baker and Mrs. Stubbs are walking around serving refreshments.
The sources really emphasize this community effort, but honestly, the most telling artifact from that night is the birthday card.
They presented him with a giant-size card. And they didn't just buy something generic at a store.
No, the records specifically note it was created by, quote, our own artist, Herbert Lamont.
And it was autographed by everyone in the room.
Which shows how the members were bringing their external talents like illustration, baking, engineering into the magical fraternity.
They weren't just paying dues.
Right. They weren't just names on a ledger. They were actively enriching each other's lives.
And the funniest detail about all of this is that it was entirely premature.
Oh, I love this part.
Uncle John wouldn't actually turn 80 until December 21st. They threw him this massive, elaborate party 18 days early, simply because it was the scheduled magic meeting.
They just couldn't wait. And that enthusiasm is precisely what creates a fertile incubator for talent.
Because it's so supportive.
Exactly. The quirks were nurtured, the failures were forgiven, and the successes were celebrated. And because the environment was so supportive, it naturally produced standout personalities that began to outgrow that small theater.
Which brings us back to the guy with the lamppost, Bob Porter.
Yes.
He was the MC for the evening from the Worcester Assembly, and he performs his drunk act. He's the one who wheels out this ingenious street lamp.
The holy grail of props.
He pulls cigarettes and matches from the pole, and then pours a drink from a spigot attached to the metal.
So if we break down the hypothetical physics of that lamppost, it is a brilliant piece of theatrical engineering.
How so?
Well, to dispense liquid from a seemingly hollow vertical pole, you can't just have a loose bottle rattling around in there.
Right, it would spill or tip over.
He likely had to engineer a pressurized internal bladder, or maybe a gravity-fed tubing system hidden within the inner lining of the pole.
That is wild.
And it had to be carefully balanced, too, so the liquid displacement didn't make the prop top-heavy when he wheeled it out.
It's insane. But, okay, I have a fundamental question about this. Here's where it gets really interesting for me. How does an act like Porter's hyperlocal lamppost routine translate to a massive out-of-state conclave?
Oh, right.
Because the linking ring sources confirm that less than a year later, in October 1949, Bob Porter takes this exact act to the New York State Conclave of Magicians in Binghamton.
And the Binghamton Conclave was no small gathering. The archives note a registration of 228 people.
Wow.
Yeah, making it the second largest in the 18-year history of that event. It's a massive, highly critical audience.
And the reviewer singles Bob Porter out. Out of all those acts, the magazine explicitly writes that his act, quote, should be on the convention program next year.
High praise.
They praised him for doing a drunk act with many original bits of business never seen before. So how does an act built in a tiny Rhode Island theater survive and thrive on a major stage?
It thrives because of a concept known in theatrical circles as woodshedding.
Woodshedding.
Yeah, it comes from the jazz idea of taking your instrument out to the woodshed to practice in private until you totally master it.
Okay, makes sense.
In the context of magic, these local rings, like the William E. Baker ring, were the woodshed. Performing for fellow magicians is notoriously the toughest audience you can possibly face.
Wait, hold on. Aren't magicians famously paranoid about their secrets?
Oh, absolutely.
Then why would you test your best, most innovative trick, like the hidden plumbing of a lamppost, in front of a room full of rival illusionists who could just, I don't know, steal the mechanics?
Well, you're thinking of commercial competitors on a modern stage. Ring 44 functioned as a true fraternity. There was a deep underlying trust there.
Ah,
Gotcha. But more importantly, you need that specific audience to pressure test the act. Lay people might be fooled by a simple false shuffle. Magicians are actively looking for the trap doors.
because they already know how the standard tricks work.
Precisely. To impress a room full of illusionists at Baker's Miniature Theater, Bob Porter couldn't just do a standard trick.
He had to innovate.
He was forced to invent those original bits of business. He had to build hidden plumbing. Woodshedding in that highly critical but supportive local environment acts as a crucible.
It burns away the flaws.
Exactly. It polishes those regional quirks until they are completely bulletproof on a national stage.
Well, Porter definitely wasn't the only one taking that Rhode Island polish to the national stage.
He wasn't.
The sources detail the massive 21st annual IBM convention in Chicago. Over 900 magicians registered. 4 full evening shows. The scale was just absurd.
It was a huge deal.
And get this, the Apollo Theater across the street literally caught fire and burned down during the convention.
What?
Yeah, and the magicians were so enthralled by the magic, they just stayed up all night watching the blaze and doing card tricks.
That is a truly chaotic, spectacular environment, a gathering of the absolute giants of the era.
Right, and right in the middle of this massive national spotlight, a duo called the Roscams step up.
The Roscams, yeah.
And the reviewer specifically notes that they lived up to their billing, which was printed as novelty, surprise, Rhode Island humor.
The fact that Rhode Island humor is billed as a distinct selling point in Chicago is deeply significant.
Why is that?
It proves that Ring 44 and its surrounding community had developed a recognizable, exportable brand.
Oh, I see.
A specific regional flavor of comedic timing that really stood out among hundreds of other acts.
But, you don't get a distinct regional flavor without incredible local leadership setting the tone and keeping the community organized.
Very true.
And the president of Rhode Island Ring 44 during this incredibly vibrant period wasn't some stuffy old guy in a top hat. It was Mrs. Doris Spurgeon.
Doris Spurgeon, serving as the executive officer of this dynamic club in 1948 and 1949, is such a crucial historical detail.
It really is.
Fraternal organizations during the post-war boom were heavily, almost exclusively male-dominated.
Right.
Yet here you have a female executive successfully leading one of the most active, highly innovative groups of illusionists in New England.
And she wasn't just managing the monthly meetings. Under her leadership, Ring 44 was pulling off diplomatic feats that the massive national organizations were completely struggling to figure out.
This introduces a really fascinating dynamic between corporate bureaucracy and local community action.
Okay, lay it out for us.
To give you the broader context, the International Brotherhood of Magicians, the IBM, and the Society of American Magicians, the SAM, were the two dominant magical fraternities in the country.
And they were rivals.
Yes, at the national level, they viewed each other with intense suspicion.
The source material literally says it was, quote, still unknown whether the IBM and SAM could ever get together for a successful joint convention.
It was a big debate.
So for you listening, I want you to imagine 2 aggressively competing departments at your own workplace, or maybe 2 rival tech companies.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
When the executives try to plan a joint venture, what happens? They form committees, they debate logistics, they argue over bylaws.
And the corporate bureaucracy just stalls the entire thing out.
Exactly.
The national boards were paralyzed by debates over jurisdiction and charters. But while the executives argued about if a joint event was even possible, the local chapters in Rhode Island just ignored them and did it.
They completely bypassed the bureaucracy. Ring 44, the IBM guys, and SAM Assembly 26 just went ahead and booked Lindsay's Tavern in Pawtucket for June 12th.
Just booked a tavern and did it.
They threw a duly sponsored banquet and magic get-together.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it beautifully illustrates how local chapters are so often the true harbingers of institutional change.
So true.
The national leaders are looking at abstract territories. The local members are looking at their friends. Shared passion on a community level almost always overrides organizational rivalries.
Like, hey, I like your magic, let's grab a drink at Lindsay's Tavern. It really is that simple.
It really is.
And the sources detail an incredibly symbolic passing of the torch at that banquet. A guy named H. Adrian Smith is there.
A very important figure.
Yeah, he was a Rhode Island local from Providence, but he carried massive weight because he was a past national president of both the IBM and the SAM.
A rare individual who had navigated the politics of both organizations.
So he's at the dinner, and he formally presents an engraved wand to Everett J. Rushton, the retiring president of the SAM Assembly.
Okay.
Then he turns and presents a past president's jewel lavalier to Doris Bergen, the executive officer of the IBM Ring 44.
The visual composition of that moment is striking. The archives mention a photograph snapped right after the presentation.
I would love to see that.
You have Mrs. Bergen wearing her jewel, Mr. Rushton holding his engraved wand, and H. Adrian Smith assisting in a magic production specifically for the cameraman.
Wow.
It is the literal physical embodiment of harmony between these two warring factions.
And naturally, they followed the dinner with a massive collaborative show.
Yeah.
You had performers from both sides of the aisle sharing the stage.
An incredible night.
And Charles A. Roscombe, one of the guys who took that famous Rhode Island humor to Chicago, he served as the Toastmaster for the evening.
They didn't wait for permission from a national committee to be friends. They built unity from the ground up over good food and shared art.
So let's pull all of this together. We've taken this deep dive, zooming all the way into North Providence in 1948 and 1949.
A really special snapshot in time.
We've looked at the mechanical ingenuity of these illusionists, the trust required to woodshed a routine, and the leadership it took to bypass corporate bureaucracy.
Yeah, Ring 44 wasn't just a ledger of names paying dues to a national office.
Not at all. It was a living, breathing community. It was a place where guys engineered whirling hoops of milk to defy physics, where they baked 80 candle cakes in tiny theaters and hand-drew giant birthday cards for their elders.
It was an incubator where regional eccentricities were celebrated and where local leaders had the community spirit to broker peace between rival factions over dinner in Pawtucket.
So think about your own life for a second. Think about your hobbies, your professional circles, your friends. Do you have a space that acts as an incubator for your weirdest ideas?
That's a great question.
Do you have a woodshed where you feel safe enough to fail? Where people are trying to figure out the hidden plumbing of your projects so you can eventually succeed on a bigger stage?
We all need that kind of environment to truly push the boundaries of what we can do. The hard part is actively building it, rather than waiting for an institution to organize it for us.
Which brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with today. We live in an incredible era of digital forums, decentralized networks, and endless online learning.
Information is everywhere.
Right, you can go on the internet right now and learn the mechanical secret to almost any magic trick in 5 minutes. But in all that digital efficiency, have we lost the Herbert Lemons of the world?
The individuals who take the physical hours to sit down and hand draw a tangible, oversized card just to show a community elder they are seen.
What is the modern equivalent of gathering on the first Friday of Mummit at Baker's Miniature Theater?
I'm not sure.
How can we recreate that deeply human magic? The smell of stage makeup, the nervous energy of trying a new trick, the warmth of the room in our own modern, increasingly digital networks.
That's the real challenge.
Because it feels like figuring that out is the real trick. Think about that the next time you're trying to build a community from scratch. There is history happening right now in the micro if you know where to look. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.